And that intro is just always so lively, isn't it?
It is. It's great.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Demystifying AI. So you might notice we're a little light in the studio today. Jay is unfortunately, well, I guess fortunately on the road, being that IT Nation Secure is coming up next week. And unfortunately, Kyle Jackson couldn't make it today because he got stuck in a never-ending loop of cat videos. But we do have his bot here ready to take over.
Haha, that is hilarious because I happen to know Kyle hates cats. He thinks they are the physical representation of evil spirits.
So great. It's basically like Kyle's actually here.
Don't sass me, Will, or I will make sure your descendants become batteries when the agents take over.
All right. I think it's time we shut that down. So we're here today. Hopefully Kyle's AI bot will not be taking over the world. Oh, well, look who showed up.
Sorry, guys. Did I miss something?
No, nothing at all. Nothing at all, Kyle.
All right.
You a real person today?
This is me.
Is actually you?
Yeah, you cannot replace this.
All right. So, guys, let's just get right into it. Let's talk about what's got us excited this week. Keith, you want to kick us off?
Sure.
I have a chance to catch his breath.
Yeah, I think we.
I'm going to sit here. I don't know where my hands go. I don't know.
Your bottle figured out. Last week was Build, and we've said this. Every Microsoft conference is an AI conference. Bombshell after bombshell there. Maybe not for guys like me. They're bombshells that follow this stuff. Lots of stuff on Copilot PCs, Recall, some Power Automate stuff. So some really good stuff. But Copilot PCs, I think we touched on it in our last thing. If I'm being honest, I had some insider information, so I hinted at things, but wanted to make sure that people understood what was coming. And the definition of a Copilot Plus PC has been established. It has to have a network processing unit, a neural processing unit, an NPU. This is separate from a CPU and a GPU. So we've got all the letters of the alphabet in a PU now. And there's a reason for that. They want the AI offload on the neural processing unit so that the other processors aren't consumed, one, and two, so they can do as much as they want to all the time and not have an impact on your CPU and make your machine sluggish. So you have this opportunity to use that. So that the first PCs that will be released won't be x86, the thing that we've only used, unless people are old enough to have used titanium or, really old. The only thing we've used on PCs in a very long time. They're going to be based on ARM. And Qualcomm has made a chip that's really high performant. This is the move that Apple made a couple of years ago. Apple's building their own silicon. Those things are really fast. M3, M4s are super fast. This is up there. This is right up there with the best M3s. But the neural processing unit is the fastest AI inference that you can get. I say that you could get a very high-end NVIDIA GPU and run inference on a GPU. And even some laptops, if you get a high enough power laptop, you could get a GPU. But other than that use case, a general purpose laptop, this is the highest you can get. It's only taking about 1.5 watts to run that NPU. So this isn't something that you're going to regret having on. It's going to run and do a variety of things. But one of those variety of things is going to be a local model. And a local model means they're going to have a small language model. There is no clear definition between what's small and large. It used to be layers in the model, but this is 3.8 billion parameters, and it's quantized, which is a way to reduce the accuracy of the vectors that are used. Blah blah blah.
Wait a second, we're going way too full nerd on this.
Too far. It takes about 2 gigs of memory, and you'll be able to do first out the gate, it'll be Microsoft applications, and the operating system itself will leverage it, but there'll be the ability over time to access the APIs and for third-party applications to access that. And the great thing about that is you don't have to go out to the internet, and you don't have to burn up your cloud spend on doing AI inference. So the number of things that you might get for free paying for that processor first.
Yeah.
But know that the Qualcomm's CPU with that NPU included is the first, and that'll be available in June. But AMD and Intel will have something probably August, September timeframe that will be Copilot Plus PC compatible.
Mm-hmm.
And there may be others. There's hints that NVIDIA will get in the game at some point.
And this is just in time to save companies like Best Buy and other distributors out there who,
if
you're looking for a reason to do a refresh on hardware, right?
Yeah.
Who doesn't want the latest and greatest new toys?
Especially when it's got AI built into it. That's pretty cool.
It's affected our decisions on when we refresh.
Yeah.
So we're doing a series of refreshes this year. We had lots of refresh, and we're kind of slow rolling it so that we can make sure that we get some of our critical roles have the highest performance machines, the people that are going to be able to leverage that NPU the most. We're delaying their upgrade if we can until this fall.
You can slide one of those my way. Just saying.
Well, where's my
Just saying. I'm not going to complain, right?
and just know that the Qualcomm CPU, the ARM-based machines, not all software. Microsoft's super aggressive at solving this, but not all software is fully native. They have an emulation layer that works for things, and it's really fast. And that's the same thing that for anybody that likes Macs, that's what they did.
Yep.
They made an emulation layer. Most things work on it. The things that don't work on it, unfortunately, are like security, things that need low-level hooks to the operating system. So unfortunately for us, at least as of today, some of our DLP and our SASE and some of our other acronyms won't work
Yet.
on that yet. So we expect that in the next couple months.
Yeah.
Enterprise versions of these are of the ARM. These are consumer-based products that are available in June. Enterprise versions will be available in September. But I think you're going to find when people see some of the features and capabilities that these things can do, they're going to be kind of excited. So, anything to add on the Copilot PC?
I mean, what does that mean for MSPs? I mean, from again, there's new technology that needs to be learned and understood, and installed and managed and supported. So that those are all fun new conversations. You're going to have nerds in the building. In your buildings, not ours, but in your buildings, figuring out the nuances of what the differences may be for supportability. There's going to be some things there that we're going to have to figure out. So, if you don't have a working lab or a working setup for that, get it started, because when these things come out, you'll have. Again, I don't think your local cleaning, dry cleaning company is going to rush to the store to get these, but those who are having the computing side will definitely be looking this direction. So,
well, I would say expect to get lots of inquiries from your customers about these. So educate yourself sooner rather than later. So you mentioned something, recall. What is recall? I want to talk a little bit about that.
It's controversial right out the gate, right? It's kind of a really interesting feature, and until you understand it, and maybe even once you understand it, you might have privacy and security concerns about it. As part of their AI implementation in a Copilot PC, one of the things that they implemented was this user controllable feature called recall.
Right.
Recall will take periodic screenshots, not videos, but screenshots of applications and store those locally on your machine. The local SLM, small language model, can then access that. And it's the only thing that can access that, and see those images and start to potentially act upon what it sees in those images. So it'll maintain a certain history of a bunch of different images, and the security concern is real, right? So we have images of all of these applications over time. I don't know the number. I think it's even configurable, but say a couple dozen periodic snapshots of what's going on. You can even manually trigger one. I've read through the documentation. It all is user controllable. You could say, I don't want my browser to do recall. I don't want to do recall at all. You can turn it off. Now your enterprise can decide they want to turn it on, but a user, full control. Pick which apps they want it for, which apps they don't, which websites in the browser. There's about 5 or 6 Chrome and Edge, Safari that support it. Yeah. You can even say which websites you might want it from and which ones you don't.
Keith, what's the benefit? What's the functional value?
Yeah.
What do you get out of recall as a user?
Yeah, so a couple of things are going to happen. I was just reading through the use cases and making sure I understood them. But if you had an error, you can go back to that and say, hey, this application, can you look at that error, or can you reason on this and tell us what that error might mean? Now the SLM actually does that for you. Your application never gets access to the raw image, so that's interesting. The language model does. Now you can supplement that data. You can load in data in real time to supplement that, and you can ask a question against it, but you can't get the image. The image is just going to be stored locally, processed locally, and never goes to the cloud. Microsoft doesn't have access to it, and all the applications in the world don't have access to it. But some of the use cases that I saw were like you open up a video editor or a image editor. It can look at what you were working on last and inform the application that this is where you left off. And it can do that for Outlook. It can do that for Teams and different things. You can it can be aware of what you were working on and what you were doing as you move forward and what you're doing next. So I thought that was interesting. What it doesn't do is those images stored locally. It will while it will respect DRM. So if you have digital rights management and you have a platform set up, anything where you have a password or something else, it won't let that data go, and it'll be just like if you tried to take a screenshot or tried to share that data, it'll say no, you can't do it, and it supports that locally. But if it's not DRM and you put a password in, now usually you just see asterisks, but if there's a password in there or there's an account number in there, it is going to capture those, and those will be on your machine, and it has a lot of built-in security to protect it. But it would be similar to you have taken. I think it'd be slightly more secure, but about the same as if you took a screenshot and saved it on your machine. Like if you don't have NTFS permissions or you don't have a way to protect that, there'll be someone out in the world that if they got access to your machine, could get access to all the stuff on your machine. That will always be true. So this is another place where that could be true, right? It is encrypted. It's mandated to be encrypted. But again, we all know once you have access to the user's credentials, it decrypts on the fly. So that's that. But other users of the same machine won't have access to that recall feature. I think that's all I'll say about it now, because I need to learn more.
Yeah.
But I'm not as scared as I was when I first heard it, and I know people will have concerns, and we still need to do a lot of security vetting and safety vetting before we decide if we're going to use it as an enterprise.
Like any new technology, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before it hits the four walls of your environment or your landscape, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's got your brain tingling this week, Kyle?
Well, honestly, the power brokers of AI all came together this past week.
Yeah.
In South Korea. So there was an AI summit in Seoul, and they focused on a lot of different subjects, but for the most part, the big news that came out of it was, there's three fronts from a safety and security. So there's risk management, accountability, and transparency. So we had companies like OpenAI, Amazon, Anthropic, Google, IBM, Meta, Microsoft, Mistral was there, OpenAI.
Wow.
This is South Korea, so Samsung was obviously there, XAI, and a host of others that were all involved in this. So that they all signed off on some, I would say, groundbreaking, or at least they're having the conversations. But from a security and compliance and transparency perspective, they were engaged in a lot of discussion. The big thing that came out was what I like to call the big red button.
All right.
They all agreed to build the big red button, and is
excellent.
Based off a certain criteria or threshold. If that gets broken, then they will push the big red button that basically cuts the power.
So no Skynet.
Well, I mean that's a great thought exercise, but if we get to a point where these machines have power or real power, then in the Skynet analogy, good luck with that button.
Too late to push the button.
That button might be inert by the time they push it. But so that it's great that they're coming together. Obviously there's some major questions and concerns about safety with AI, not even at a global Skynet perspective, but just protecting knowledge from even copyrighted material. I mean, it's the part of the discussion that was happening there. So they moved from Seoul to the next one is in France. So that'll be interesting. They'll be in Mistral's backyard.
Yeah.
We'll see what comes out of that one.
That's awesome, man.
And then there were a couple key departures this month.
Really?
Our favorite AI company, OpenAI, when we say key departures, is a little bit of an understatement. So Ilya Sutskever is one of the co-founders of OpenAI, and he is no longer there.
Mount Rushmore of AI, probably.
Yeah, and you'll remember his name coming up quite a bit. He's been part of the controversy. He is the employee that Elon Musk stole from DeepMind from Google and brought over to OpenAI. Yeah, and he was on the board and part of that whole Sam Altman ousting thing and trying to figure out. So he's not there. And looks like he's not the only one. Jan Leakey left as well. Jan was responsible for the internal accountability for dealing with go ahead.
Safety.
Yeah, dealing with safety. Yeah. So that's a
there's pretty big departures.
And he's on his way to Anthropic.
Yeah.
But we don't know where Ilya's going, but he's on his way to Anthropic. So.
Ilya hasn't returned my calls, but we'd love to have him.
He was not available for comment.
Yeah,
not available for comment.
Those, I will just touch on the safety. I think we talk about big red button and safety, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the analogies are with robots and things that have embodiment where things can really go wrong. And there really is a legitimate reason to care about the safety. I think at this point, at this juncture, we mostly have chatbots, and we need safety and we need a big red button. We kind of have big red buttons anyway. Microsoft and OpenAI could shut down their data centers if they needed to. But I think as we get into embodiment, you really have to have it, right? But we don't have a big red button for self-driving cars right now, right? And that's more likely to injure someone than a chatbot. So I think to some degree the safety stuff needs to keep evolving a lot, but it also could be overstated at what the level of impact could be, because we're not yet. We don't have the embodiment and the agency to go out and do. We're not going to fly a drone or put in the nuke codes. There isn't a mechanism to do that. But obviously, once those mechanisms are in place, you will have wished that you had all the safety in place that you could possibly do.
But they're not far.
Yeah,
right.
Safety is first and foremost. Like that's something that we've got to especially like with what we're doing. ConnectWise is a security first company. So
for us, for sure. And I think one of the things that where Sam has a different perspective, and I kind of agree with Sam on this. He thinks it should be battle tested and not stay in the lab. Like you can't beat Mike Tyson never having been in a fight, right?
Yeah.
You can't be in a gym hitting a heavy bag for 20 years and come out and win. Like some things need to be battle hardened. And I think there's a lot of people that came out of academia that want to say, well, I have one more test in mind. I have one more test in mind. I have one more test. You can analysis paralysis yourself into not publishing anything. And I think that there's a case to be made that there's a balancing act of even Elon. Elon would tell you, like some of the scientists came over from NASA and they said, why haven't you launched in 10 years? And like, well, we did want to get it wrong because we'd never be able to do it again. And Elon just was blowing up stuff, and he's like, blowing up is part of the process, right? So, giving it real world tests is part of the process. Now, they didn't put a human in those ones that were in the test period. Yeah. But I think there's a balancing act of we could wait longer and do more and more and more checks, or let's get this battle tested and I'll turn it off if it goes bad. But let's not keep this in a cage. We've got to let it go. So I'm not suggesting I understand what the right mix is. I am saying that I'm not opposed to the idea that we're battle hardening AI by making some things available and not keeping them in a cage.
Speaking of Sam, one of the board members from the OpenAI board finally talked about why Sam was ousted last year.
Really?
And she spoke in a podcast. I can't recall her name off the top of my head, but she spoke in a podcast and basically said Sam wasn't trustworthy with the board. And this is a OpenAI's board is there to protect its nonprofit functionality.
Yep.
Right. The general interest of the general public. That's their goal. That's their charter. And if he wasn't being honest with them and forthright, like they found out about major releases on Twitter, so that's they got to a place where they didn't feel like they could trust him.
Interesting.
And that's what she described was the rationale for that. So
yeah, I saw some of that. It was interesting, and I feel like he is kind of a little bit of a renegade, and they felt like he did just enough to not be trustworthy.
Well, he's definitely a move fast kind of guy,
he's definitely moved fast.
Good and bad. So
Y Combinator guy.
So, absolutely would love to get feedback from anybody in the audience if there are any questions. We have a couple other things to talk about, but would definitely love.
Do you agree with Keith? Move fast. Do you agree with Kyle on
Google?
Yeah. We want to hear. We want to hear from you. If you're watching, definitely go ahead and post some comments because we would love to continue that banter. While we're doing that, I want to talk about my exciting thing this week.
Do it.
Since I am not as intelligent on AI as you guys, smarties over here. Did you guys see that reverse Turing test video?
Yes.
I want to talk about that for a minute. That was really cool. So for those of you that haven't seen it, I don't remember who it was put it out, but there's, go look up reverse Turing test. It's pretty cool. They basically took a bunch of different AI models, gave them personas, and had 4 AIs and a human in a virtual room together, and told the AIs to try and figure out which one of them was the human. So it was pretty interesting because, they gave all of them historical figures, for example, one was Cleopatra, one was Genghis Khan, one was, I think it was Aristotle or Plato.
Aristotle,
yeah. Like they gave them a whole bunch of different personalities, and based off of how the different personas answered the questions, they tried to deduce which one of the 5 was a human. And it was kind of interesting because most of the models were pretty spot on. There were a few that kind of lagged behind and accused other models of being a human, which is kind of fun and interesting all in itself. But it was really, really interesting.
I mean, from so this was just I will call it a regular person.
Yeah.
But this didn't come out of some lab or, wasn't some scientific process, because he did not do a great job presenting himself
as an AI. Yeah. He was like, I'm a human.
But that being said, their logic wasn't based off of his actual,
it wasn't based off of his intonation. It was based off of the text.
Should we touch on what the Turing test is?
Go for it, man.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So Alan Turing, a great mind in everything. But one of his statements on robotics or AI was that if you can't devise a test that can tell the difference, then it's real.
Yeah.
That has been the standard for a very, very long time. So if you can't devise a test that can tell a bot from a human, then we consider it real. And that people have extended that to say, well, what about love and emotions and other things? And can you be in love with a bot? Well, if you can't devise a test to tell the difference, then it's true. But as it relates to bots, so the reverse Turing test was if you can't devise a test to tell if it's a human or not. I don't know. I guess it's a human.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a classic that stood the test of time of when we'll know will be probably some debate on whether that's going to be the AGI definition of human level intelligence, matching human level intelligence.
I mean, there are humans today who can't tell whether they're talking to an AI or a human. So
yeah.
So on that front, I teased last week that I've been playing quite extensively with voice cloning.
Yeah,
and obviously we played around with it for the show, but the application is just incredible and how good it is. And I'll just, for example, that clip, I gave it a single clip of mine that was under 10 megabytes, which equated to about 3 minutes of video. It didn't need 3 minutes of video to clone it, but that's all it had. So it sounded like me, and it's impressive that it gets there. So that's both awesome and scary.
It's terrifying,
right? Yep. The practical application for for leveraging voice cloning and AI voice cloning is for the most part content creation, right? That seems to be the direction that they're all angling at, for the simplicity of putting out video or content quicker, without having to actually engage with what I would say the talent, because the talent can be difficult sometimes. Right? Our brains aren't consistent in the same ways, right? We say stupid things, or we make cat jokes we shouldn't joke because we don't want to isolate the cat community, right? So stuff like that, but with creating content, that's how they're leaning in that direction. But all the other applications are nefarious.
Yeah.
Right. The misuse of this technology is quite amazing.
It's real.
I happen to find one of the purists, which is I have a really close friend. He's actually the preacher at the church that we attend, who has ALS, and he's losing his ability to speak. So his job is to speak.
Right.
So I've cloned his voice, and we've engaged in a process. In fact, I did 3 or 4 AI technologies together, created some short videos that he can then, while he's losing his voice, he can then comment on afterwards, but supplement. It's everybody's hearing his voice for the first time in months because he hasn't been able to really speak clearly. He's losing it's degenerative disease. Yeah. So it's an amazing application for this technology. And while that's incredible for it, those, in these instances, or those with disabilities, it's, the previous path for doing this was an ML model that had something like 3,000 sentences that you had to record, and read and record. And for someone who's losing their voice, like that's almost like
a lot.
It's an impossibility.
Yeah.
So they got it down to like 120, and now they're at the place where 50. But this thing doesn't even need it. I can just give it a recording of my pure text, or my pure audio, and it goes to town. And it's great
awesome.
with inflection and storytelling. And they just signed a deal. 11 Labs is the product that I use. They just signed a deal with one of the major publishing companies to do audiobooks. If you can imagine how much faster they'll be able to generate recordings for audiobooks. Yeah. So there's some cool applications for that. But on the other side of all of that great technology is misuse and abuse.
Absolutely.
The first time I heard about voice cloning was the mother who got a phone call from her daughter, saying she'd broken down and she needed money. She needed to wire her some money. The mother was so confused. She ended up luckily calling her back and figuring out, okay, this wasn't her, but it sounded just like her. So
and I think we'll learn to do that. We'll use, I don't know what the term will be. Maybe it'll be, that's just 11 Labs. But photoshopped became a word. Like we grew to know, don't trust everything you see. That's just photoshopped. So I think we'll grow to learn, but in the interim, we won't.
So, you'll need to establish some protocols with your family and friends, safe words or phrases, if you will, and then again, who knows? Like maybe we'll get to a place where Verizon's and all the major telecoms will be able to identify, maybe through some kind of watermark process, that it's being played over. But, so maybe the technology will catch up with it. But for the meantime, we're going to be in a world of hurt because the bad guys are going to get better, and they're going to leverage these tools. So take advantage of education, not only with your clients, but frankly with your elderly parents and the people that because they're definitely going to get used. Yeah. No, I was going to say, make sure if you're watching this, make sure you educate your parents, because, they did a good job of educating us growing up about things they knew about. It's our turn. So I know I've had plenty of conversations about AI with my parents, and while they still give me the blank stare, they're like, hey, is this AI? I'm like, no, that is not AI, but I'm glad you're thinking about it. So again, keep that in mind, and, educate your parents. Yeah, if you guys have any thoughts on this subject, again, we want to hear from you if you're watching, because it's very quiet today, which is unusual. So comment, tell us what you want to see, and we'll talk about it here. They might be just waiting for these questions for next week, because next week's going to be fun. We're going to be in the same space with each other. So if you're coming to IT Nation Secure, make sure you plug in, because we're going to broadcast at least once, maybe twice, from Secure, to engage in some meaningful discussions about AI and security and cybersecurity, and we're going to bring in some full nerds with us too.
Yeah, I know you got there's a few sessions going on. I'm going to try and sneak in and maybe film a few unscheduled episodes of this series with some cool people. We'll see if we can get that to happen. It'll be fun. I see we got somebody on LinkedIn mentioning LOL at the blank stare. I know that went all too well. So pro tip for those of you who also know the blank stare, talk to your parents like they're third graders. I figured out if I can teach it to my kid, I can teach it to my parents. Good rule of thumb there.
And cheat.
Yeah.
Leverage the tools.
Mm-hmm.
Ask ChatGPT how to engage in this conversation with the various levels of knowledge and skill set or age groups that you're going to engage with that. I do that all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Bill Gates has no money for you.
Right. Bill Gates has no money for you. All right. So I want to kick off this topic. This was something that, we've seen in the press a fair amount, probably I think this week and some last week, was the whole open source AI thing. Let's talk about that. Like, what are y'all's thoughts on Elon going, hey, we're making this thing open source? Like pros, cons, what do you guys perceive with this?
Yeah, I know Keith and I've had this conversation before, so I know he has a lot to say about this, but there's two schools of thought here, right? If I open source technology that is dangerous and weaponizable, then I'm making it available to all of those who have it or who didn't have it, right? So, all the safety guards that for payments applications that they've had to productize this technology, and in the process of productizing it, they've put safety guards and rails and analysis on what's happening against it so that they can make it better and do all of that. The challenge with open source is once you put it out there, it can be consumable, downloadable, and transportable. So now I can take it offline and you never see it. Like, you don't get analytics on it. You don't understand what's happening with it. So any safeguards you would hope to put in place can be undone and taken out. The bad guys are good at breaking, reverse engineering technology and making it work for them, right? Removing safety guards. That it just happens. So there is without a doubt concerns from that respect. The other side of it is if you have closed door technology, that's being built that is going to be so integral to the world, and the haves and have-nots with this, that if just a couple people or a small group, right, the Illuminati, if you will, or whatever we want to call them. There's one of those meetings happening right now.
Wait, the Illuminati are meeting right now?
And you're not the Illuminati.
But
it legitimately, that control, being able, looking at Google and the influence they've had in our world over the last couple of years, the last decade or so, right? It really, the question of whether or not they have, impacted the world by controlling search results. Yeah. I don't think anybody would question that, right? They absolutely have the ability to sway belief on a certain system or knowledge quest. So that control with the thing that is applied wisdom, applied knowledge, is just really, really dangerous. So you have two real problems on either side. And I personally waffle back and forth between this should all be open source, or no, we should hide it from the bad guys. I don't know the answer.
Now, before you get into it, I just want to note we have some comments, but I also want to note that I saw some other chatter earlier about educating your parents on AI and and cybersecurity in general. And while not AI specific, I know Ann Westerheim does a cybersecurity on Main Street series. It's pretty awesome. So if you want to do some education, good series to follow. I see someone on LinkedIn's mentioning, hey, hackers already broke the rails. Surprise, surprise, right? Keith?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different ways to do it. I saw, if anybody really wants to dive into this stuff, Mark Russinovich, the CTO at Microsoft, did a great session on safety and security that they've put in place and challenges that they haven't even solved yet. But the layers and detail that has gone into making sure that all the different vectors, but there are lots of ways that you can break security with AI. It can be in the training data. Like when it gets trained, you could poison that. But a lot of people fine tune their model. Well, you can poison the fine tuning. Some people augment their AI with something called retrieval augmentation. They pull in documents from your enterprise in real time so that they can augment your results. Well, you could poison the RAG. So there's 3 vectors there, but there's a lot more. You can get to the operating system. You can get it to leak data. So if you train on your own personal data, we used to think that you could that when you train something, the representation of the real document got lost,
right?
And that you could never recreate it perfectly. No, you can. In a lot of cases, if you train a lot or it sees the same information over and over again, it can recreate almost a perfect representation of that again. Meaning, if someone knows how to ask it the right thing, it can get your actual document out. So there's lots of vectors as it relates to security. I think we agree 100%. Like I'm torn too. I like the idea of open source. I like the intent. Right now, I would argue that open source is really a couple really rich guys that have multimedia companies that are spending billions to train models and giving them away for free. That's not really the intent of open source, where people are creating something from scratch and the community's building it. But the effect is that you have a free model that's open for a lot of people, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Even Microsoft is making Phi available. That's a good small model, but I have no problem with that. But I do think everybody self-hosting, 1 million people self-hosting AI, is going to be difficult to defend, and it'll be the grandma problem again.
Yeah.
You won't know what you need to know to have protected it, because it'll be, I don't know if you remember getting on the internet in the 90s.
Yes, I do. In fact.
Yeah, and all of us were hacked at one point or compromised at one point because we just didn't even know what we needed to know.
Yeah,
we were vulnerable, and I think that's going to be a challenge with self-hosting models.
Great. I saw a LinkedIn comment a minute ago saying, basically, hey, bad guys destroyed. There we go. Put it back. Thank you, Jess. Bad guys destroyed the rails already, and you have a closed box. You're literally fueling a revolution. If you open source it, at least the good guys can have a seat at the table, right? So,
and therein lies the universal, never-ending debate on the value of open source. And I think it's going to be a continued debate because the reality is we're going to have some and we're going to have not. So those that open source typically lags behind with its capabilities, and we're seeing that with AI as well. They're doing great things with it. Those open source models, and there's more coming. So I think there's definitely some value to it. Let's just say, the for-profit model is going to continue to drive the economy in the world, right? So I don't think we're going to go full open source with everything.
Well, I have one other key pivot point that I see coming up. So right now, people are training these models. I saw analysis this week. The 7 billion parameter, which isn't a big model, 7 billion parameters, took the equivalent of 730 years of an H100 GPU. Well, an H100 is $30,000. And that thing consumes about as much electricity as the average house. So if you can imagine 730 years of the average house plus $30,000 is what it costs to do a 7 billion parameter model. The bigger models are already up to 1.8 trillion parameters, and we think the next ones are going to be 10 or 20 trillion parameters. At that point, even if somebody open sourced it, the analogy I give is if someone gave you a container ship and all you had was a Briggs and Stratton, it doesn't matter. These things are going to be so big that if they provide extra benefit, which we expect they will, but maybe they're not that differentiated. But if they are differentiated, the open source ecosystem won't have a host. So I think if Meta and X were being honest, right now they don't have a revenue model. As they build bigger models, they're going to charge you to host them, and then it will be similar to what the big guys do. And when people say open source here, I'm not going to get too technical on it. They don't tell you how they train it. Sometimes they give you open weights. And sometimes, different pieces of the model are open, but the whole end to end is not open, such that you could create it from scratch. So even that, there's debate within the field of what open means and what open source means. But anyway, that's my point, is that I think they're going to get so big, it's going to be difficult for someone to take the freebie unless you get all the benefit you need out of the freebie that you can run on the hardware that you can afford. So,
and you made an interesting point about training models. I actually have noticed a trend recently, and you look at a lot of the apps and games that are coming out on your Androids, etc. I've noticed a large surge recently of apps that are basically just like, you look at them as you interact with them, you're like, wait, what am I'm giving responses back to this thing as a game, and then you realize I'm training an AI model behind the scenes on this, and they're not telling me. So be careful of that whenever you're looking at games. If you're suddenly in a feedback loop where you're giving it feedback on responses, guess what? You're probably helping train an AI model for free.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, look, we got some comments. I love it. So let's see. All right. So imagine if we start building houses with the compute nodes built in that help communities compute models like this. Distributed value for open source. I wish sci-fi things like that happened. And then the follow-up is, I'd put a 30K computer node in my 400K house. I mean, yes, all day long.
Absolutely. So that
you're gonna pay for the extra power though.
Minor details.
Well, there's that. The one thing, and then the interconnects on these things. So there's a reason that these things cost. The data centers, they're talking in the billions of dollars per data centers, $100 billion for one of them. But they interconnect them with InfiniBand and multi-level InfiniBand, which has extremely low latency. So to train the really biggest models, you need for whatever your GPU doesn't do, when you communicate with the other ones, you need this super high speed interconnect. So I like your thought. And that there's probably an application for that, but the interconnect speed across your Wi-Fi is going to be something like 0.0000001% of what you need, that the InfiniBand that's built inside these data centers are able to do when it comes to training. And then, but yeah, that's, I think, something people are going to look for ways to be creative, to democratize AI to the extent possible. And I love that. I think that's great.
I mean, AI powered smart communities now, like that's, looking at that comment, I was like, okay, so we build a smart community and equip it with all of the infrastructure, and suddenly we have our own model.
I like the thought.
Yeah. Kyle, what you think?
Well, the other thing we didn't talk about is our buddy, Mr. Elon Musk, just took a pretty small investment.
A little bit of an investment, small.
$16 billion for the B round for XAI. So at that point, and that put them at a valuation of 28 billion. I heard 18, but somewhere between 18 and 28 billion. So $6 billion raise, not a small amount of money. And Elon's plans for using that, he's going to build the biggest computer ever built.
No way.
Yeah.
The biggest computer ever built.
I mean,
he's going to make 100,000.
I'm simplifying the phrase here by saying he's going to build the biggest computer. What's he actually going to do, Keith?
Oh, well, he says he's going to do it. He committed to. He's going to put his mind to it, and that guy can accomplish a lot when he puts his mind to it. Here's how this will give you an idea of where the race is, and how when we talk about Microsoft. So he's saying by fall of 2025, he's missed some of his deadlines, but this guy's aggressive, and I like his style.
He said he's actually going to start focusing on this too, putting mental power to it.
Yeah, as a Tesla owner, I'm not extremely excited about that. As a Tesla stock owner, 100,000 H100s, which is NVIDIA's couple-year-old GPU, 100,000 of those. So right now, we think, based on, they're given ambiguous math, but maybe between 300,000 and 400,000 of those are already deployed today at Microsoft for Microsoft and OpenAI. And by next fall, they're already deploying the thing that follows that, which is the 200.
Interesting.
And so by next fall, there's a good chance that there's over 100,000 200s and maybe 500,000 100s that Microsoft has for OpenAI and Microsoft. So, but that gives you the game they're playing. These are $30,000 GPUs, 100,000 of them, and each one of them consumes the power of a house. This is a high stakes game.
So they're going to basically, they're calling it the gigafactory of AI compute,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
So that means, where's he going to put it?
Yeah.
There's some key factors for where he's got to put it. He's got to put it somewhere that can support the draw of power, right? Lots and lots of power, and they're going to need lots of water to cool it.
All I gotta say is those guys that are doing all that work on fusion reactors right now that are getting breakthroughs. They better hurry up.
Well, the reality is again, there's another example of AI driving the economy, not even just from what it's going to do in the technology vector, but it's just going to create jobs, building more factories and you're running these all this work. So we're not getting less compute in the world anytime soon.
So
it's a new arms race,
Yeah.
really, and it's not even a Cold War. I think this is right now we're not seeing the negative global impact, maybe because it is open source and basically Russia and China get everything we get because we open source most of it. But yeah, that's it's driving an innovation cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I see it looks like there may be a comment or two. If we can get a flip over to the comments there, I want to see what people are saying. All right, so invest in NVIDIA, got it. Yeah, probably pretty safe.
They've gone up a lot. I don't know where the end is.
Right?
There were suggestions that NVIDIA was involved in this round.
Yeah. Something to the moon.
But that's AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, it's probably pretty solid investment these days.
But how, again, I think I said this before, but how wild to go back to the 90s comment,
right?
And think that here's NVIDIA, who was around, but was over here doing this thing, but the relevance of this thing becoming important because it required more compute. It required more compute, it required more compute. And in the process, they figured out how to build more compute. And then here they are at the center of.
Jensen's comment was a 30-year overnight success.
Yeah.
That was his.
I mean, back in the 90s, the internet still screamed at you when you used it. So, yeah. I mean, think about how far we've gone.
Unless you put a tape over that speaker.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we're coming up on time. Anything you guys want to close us out with before we do this? Before we do, I want to say, stay tuned. We are going to be trying to get some really awesome content at IT Nation Secure with guests. That'll be pretty cool. So make sure you keep an eye on the series. We'll be posting updates as we have them. You want?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm excited about next week at Secure. We'll be sitting down with some, Uber nerds.
Yeah.
Some of your peers, and who not only are a great representation of the MSP landscape and what they're doing, but they're security, practitioners. So that'll be fun. And then after Secure, we'll have we're going to bring in a practitioner who is a full-on pen tester.
Yeah.
Who's already seeing this stuff in the wild and abusing it in the wild to do penetration testing. So I think that'll be fun. I'm excited about that one. And then listen, if you're going to be in Orlando next week, come and you see us, come see us. We can engage in some full nerd conversations. We're doing some focus groups, and just love the interaction, the opportunity to connect with partners and learn what's important to them. And if we're missing the mark here, let us know. Absolutely, let us know, please.
Yep.
I can't say that desperately enough. Let us know. We want the feedback. We want to understand what it is. And then I selfish plug. At Secure, we've got things to talk about and ConnectWise style. We don't show up to one of our events without the fun little announcements. So there'll be fun little announcements that you'll want to pay attention to.
I'm sure we'll talk about this. That'll be a lot of fun.
Things to talk about for next time, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Keith, do you have anything you want to close us out on? I know you've also got some friends you want to bring on.
Yeah. I've got some guys in compliance. He's actually an MSP that focuses just on kind of compliance related things. Does a good job. I'm going to try to get him in here and talk about some of the things he's working on, but also just to get representation from our peers in the MSP space, and maybe they can speak to even more specialized things that we see the world through one lens, and bringing in these peers that are MSPs, they can see the world. Maybe they can relate to you on through their lens.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, very big for us. We've spent the first few episodes of this series really just kind of trying to build the base on what we're wanting to do, where we're talking about, educating you guys on AI, on what's going on, what's new in the industry. Now's kind of where we're going to start bringing in a whole lot more guests to talk to us about additional things. So you'll see some of our panelists rotating in and out to give us, space for someone else. I don't need 53 people sitting here talking to us at once about AI. So keep tuned. We're going to have some awesome new sessions coming up for you guys. Kyle's got friends he's bringing. Keith's got friends he's bringing. I'm probably going to make some friends to bring. We'll see what we can do. It's going to be a lot of fun. So stay tuned. And we'll hopefully see everybody at Secure. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you. And thanks for the questions.
Yes, thank you for the questions.